China's rise as a global economic powerhouse has sparked tensions between the United States and the Middle Kingdom. The recent announcement by China's Ministry of Commerce about export restrictions on rare earth metals such as gallium and germanium has played a crucial role in this strategic maneuver. China's groundbreaking move has sent shockwaves through the ongoing chip war. The current landscape of the US-China chip war. To understand the significance of China's latest move, we must first examine the existing landscape of the US-China chip war. The semiconductor industry plays a vital role in various sectors, including consumer electronics, telecommunications, defense, and artificial intelligence. Historically, the United States has held dominance in the global semiconductor market. Leading American companies such as Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA have been at the forefront of chip design and manufacturing, driving technological advancements and setting industry standards. The U.S. semiconductor industry has benefited from a robust ecosystem of research institutions, talent, and a supportive regulatory environment. This has allowed the United States to control critical aspects of the semiconductor supply chain, including intellectual property, advanced manufacturing processes, and equipment. It's important to note that the U.S. not only banned its own companies from exporting chips to China, but also extended the restrictions to companies from Japan, South Korea, and the Netherlands. Moreover, any company worldwide using US-made hardware or software for chip production faced restrictions in providing chips to China. On the other hand, China has been heavily dependent on imports for its semiconductor needs, making it vulnerable to supply chain disruptions and potential national security risks. Recognizing the risks associated with this dependence, China has been actively pursuing self-reliance in semiconductor production. The Chinese government has implemented various initiatives, such as the Made in China 2025 plan and the National Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund, to support the development of its domestic semiconductor industry. China's ambitions in the semiconductor sector have led to increased investments in research and development, talent acquisition, and infrastructure. The country has set up state-of-the-art fabrication plants, attracting both domestic and foreign investment. Chinese companies such as SMIC, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, have made significant strides in closing the technology gap with their international counterparts. China's investments and efforts aim to reduce its reliance on foreign suppliers and gain control over critical semiconductor technology. The US-China chip war has been characterized by intensifying competition and growing tensions. The United States has expressed concerns about intellectual property theft, forced technology transfer, and unfair trade practices by China in the semiconductor industry. In response, the U.S. government has imposed export controls and sanctions on Chinese technology companies, limiting their access to advanced American chip technology. China's strategic move to invest in domestic chip manufacturing is seen as a direct challenge to the United States' dominance in the semiconductor industry. By developing a robust domestic chip ecosystem, China aims to level the playing field and reduce its dependence on U.S. technology. If successful, China could disrupt the global semiconductor supply chain and become a major player in chip manufacturing, potentially undermining the United States' technological hegemony. The US-China chip war has broader implications for global technology leadership and trade dynamics. The United States faces significant challenges in maintaining its technological edge and controlling the semiconductor supply chain. China's strategic move, investing in domestic chip manufacturing. China recently made a strategic move by imposing restrictions on the export of 14 products related to gallium and germanium. This move also involves a substantial investment in domestic chip manufacturing aimed at bolstering its semiconductor industry. These elements are vital for any country's continued production of high-tech chips. Their scarcity has created shockwaves, unlike the relatively quiet response to China's previous bans on other materials. This suggests that these two elements are not as readily available as one might assume. Now, let's uncover how China has capitalized on this move and how it can work in its favor. Exerting pressure. When the U.S. initially announced chip bans on China in October 2022, China did not immediately respond. China understood that the US had already lost the chip war, primarily because the chips it restricted from China relied on raw materials sourced from China itself. China expected the US to realize its mistake and acknowledge China's upper hand. However, instead of recognizing the situation, the US escalated the conflict by adding Chinese companies to its export blacklist. Sensing this lack of patience, China decided to exert pressure and demonstrate its power. By imposing export controls on gallium and germanium, China strategically aims to pressure the US and Western governments, disrupting global supply chains and prompting semiconductor manufacturers to reconsider their actions and chip export policies. This move serves as a reminder to the US and its allies that China occupies a critical position in the global semiconductor industry and should be regarded as a key partner in any negotiations. National security concerns. While gaining bargaining power is a major driver for these restrictions, national security remains an important motivation. China's Ministry of Commerce and Administration of Customs emphasized that these restrictions are essential to safeguard China's national security and interests. Given that gallium and germanium are vital components in military technology, China's control over their export ensures their effective and secure utilization. By imposing restrictions, China aims to minimize potential vulnerabilities and safeguard its technological advancements. Additionally, China's own chip industry relies on gallium and germanium. By limiting exports, China can both secure these materials for its domestic production and reduce its reserves. China is renowned for providing raw materials at the lowest prices, and the same principle applies to gallium and germanium. Thus, China has decided to restrict exports and prioritize its own chip production. Disrupting supply chains. China's dominant position in global gallium and germanium production grants it the ability to disrupt global supply chains. With China accounting for 95% of gallium output and 67% of germanium production, its export controls can create supply shortages and increase costs for countries heavily reliant on these materials. However, China's primary intention is not solely to disrupt supply chains. It is a tool to bring the US to the negotiation table and end the chip war. China understands that no country, including the US, can afford to disrupt its supply chains. Therefore, export restrictions serve as a deterrent and put pressure on the US and Europe to engage in negotiations to avoid disruptions in their semiconductor supply chains. Gaining bargaining power. Pressure and retaliation are not China's end goals, but rather tools to initiate negotiations and bring an end to the chip war. Currently, despite seemingly normal US-China relations, collaboration in the chip industry has diminished, and talks to gradually end chip bans are absent. By leveraging its control over gallium and germanium exports, China aims to gain bargaining power and negotiate better terms, particularly regarding the easing of restrictions on semiconductors and related technology. This strategic move positions China as a key player, strengthening its position in negotiations and potentially leading to more favorable outcomes. The question remains whether the export restrictions on two rare earth metals will be sufficient to compel the US to end the chip war, or if China will expand the ban and include more rare earth metals. Share your thoughts on why China made this move at this particular time. China's recent strategic move to invest in domestic chip manufacturing has propelled them into a position of increased bargaining power and control over the US-led chip war. This development poses significant challenges for the United States, threatening its technological edge and control over the semiconductor supply chain. It also has broader implications for global trade and technology leadership. As the US and China continue to vie for dominance in the semiconductor industry, the consequences of this ongoing chip war will reverberate across the global economy, shaping the future of technology and international relations.